If I were to say that all that John Collins has done, and excuse me for being emotional, but it's so extraordinary. You can't tell John's story without first writing the history of the renewal of the Church of England after the Second World War. You can't tell the story without telling so many other stories. And these few words are not going to get anywhere near it. He has been one of the most profound influences on my own life, my own mentor. Much of what he said has been the advice that we've taken over the years. John, I don't know if you remember, you once said to me that the first thing to do when you go into a parish, it was just before I became a parish priest, you said, get to know everyone, visit, because your mistakes where you'd had trouble had always been, because he always is so full of integrity. He talks about where things didn't go well. You said where it had been difficult was where you hadn't got to know and love certain people, and they'd been the ones where there'd then been struggle. And we took that seriously, so seriously that when I started this job, Caroline and I visited all the primates of all 38 Anglican provinces in the world, 38 countries in 20 months, and that was your fault. And let me read this, and I will try and avoid going on. The Reverend Prebendary John Collins, the Canterbury Cross, for services to the Church of England, for his outstanding record in growing churches and training evangelists and leaders. For some 40 years, John Collins led several major churches into great growth and influence, trained the best evangelists and leaders produced by the Church of England, and was at the heart of the charismatic renewal. He was a curate under John Stott at All Souls Langham Place when it was beginning to grow. He went on to St. Mark's, Gillingham, then at Docklands Parish on the Medway. While he was there, the church grew from fewer than 100 to over 1,000 people, and was at the beginning of the charismatic movement in the Church of England. I remember you telling me about the Spirit falling on a PCC meeting. Truly a miracle. He moved to near Bournemouth and in a middle-class parish repeated the same process. Finally, in 1980, he went to Holy Trinity Brumpton. Within 5 years, established the foundations of a full and growing church. I remember you in that pulpit saying, why can we not imagine this building full, including the galleries? Look around, John. He established the foundations of a full and growing church. He started the first church plant. He oversaw the origins of the Alpha Course and was a principal figure in the third wave of charismatic renewal under the influence of John Wimber. In addition to all that, his training and development of leaders, including myself, was both rigorous and principled. Rigorous. Rigorous. He taught people how to preach, except me. And he set patterns for ministry, always being deeply embedded in prayer and scripture. His influence through that ministry alone has literally been incalculable. Above all, John is a person of vision, seeing long before others what could be, not just what was. Committed to church growth, he was never mechanistic, nor did he lose sight of holiness. He's infallibly courteous and kind. He stood firm on his principles without antagonism. Oh, that we could do with that today. He set the way for a generation of church planters and those who simply went forward for ordination, confident in the grace of God because of the example they'd seen in John. Many will claim to have been at the beginning of charismatic renewal. Surely one of the most significant movements of the post-war era in this country. John will never claim this. but he is known in heaven. And he should be recognized here. John, it is a privilege beyond measure to give you this very inadequate token of thanks.
Thank you, dear Justin. Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much.
Nothing at all.
I was so glad that Nicky and Pippa began by talking about rejoicing in the Lord. Because some of you may know that in fact, is my favorite verse in the Bible, Philippians 4:4. Rejoice in the Lord always. And when Diana and I were married, we decided that I would give her a watch and she would give me a watch, because neither of us had good watches. And when I bought my watch, and she gave it to me, I asked the people who sold it to me to put this verse on the back. And so on the back of my watch was, rejoice in the Lord always. And this watch was an Omega, and it gave me enormous pleasure for about 20 years. And then one day I was cutting the grass with a fly mow, and I heard a bang, and my watch strap had broken, and the watch was spread all over the glass. And almost crying, I picked up the back of the watch, and on it was written, rejoice in the Lord always. I went into the kitchen where Diana was, almost in tears, as I told you. And she gave me a great hug, looked at the little piece of the back of the watch and said, well, now this is a new situation in which you can continue to rejoice in the Lord. But to bring you up to date, I would like to mention 3 things for which I rejoice over and over and over again in the Lord. And the first is this. As you probably noticed, I was only here for a very few years, and I rejoice in the Lord and have done over and over again that Sandy and Annette succeeded me, because they took it out of the parish, and throughout their many years here, they scattered it all over the UK, something I could never have done. So that's number one. Number 2, I rejoice in the Lord because then Nicky and Pippa have continued that work, and they jumped not only out of the UK, but they jumped all over the world. As you heard, and as the Archbishop has said, the most remarkable and wonderful thing, and again, something which very, very few people could have done. So I absolutely rejoice in the Lord for that. And then my third thing is this. I rejoice in the Lord for Justin's inspiring and wonderful leadership of the Church of England. And it's absolutely wonderful, the lead that he has given us in loving one another as Christians, whatever our denomination may be. And secondly, of course, his emphasis upon prayer, which God is undoubtedly wonderfully answering throughout the country. So thank you, Justin, very, very much for the inspiring leadership that you're giving us.